On my way to work, I realized I had forgotten my phone. So I went back home and overheard my wife on the phone in the bedroom saying, "Relax, my love. He knows nothing. He's traveling tonight. Come at 10 p.m. I have the apartment keys ready for you." Before we continue, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications now, because every day we have new stories. And tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. My name is Javier Ruiz Morales. I'm 52 years old, and I work as a senior architect at a residential building construction firm in Madrid. For 23 years and 7 months, I thought I had a solid marriage with Beatriz Moreno Sanz, my 48-year-old wife, an interior designer. We had a son, Marcos, 26 years old, a student in the final semester of a master's degree in business administration. That morning of Tuesday, May 14th, 2024, I left home at exactly 7 in the morning as always. I had a crucial meeting with Japanese investors at 9:30. A 600,000 euro contract depended on that presentation. I had my briefcase with the revised plans, my laptop, and all the necessary documentation. Beatriz was still sleeping when I closed the door of our apartment in the Chambéry neighborhood. The subway was packed, as it was every morning. I squeezed into the crowd on line 10, mentally reviewing the key points of my presentation. It was exactly at 7:22 between the Gregorio Marañón and Alonso Martinez stations when I put my hand in my jacket pocket looking for my phone to check last-minute emails. The pocket was empty. I felt the other pocket. Nothing. I checked the briefcase in desperation. The cell phone wasn't there. I felt a pang of panic. All my work was synchronized on that device. Client contacts, access to design platforms, bank authentication. But more importantly, I needed that phone for the presentation. The Japanese investors would send me last-minute confirmations. I got off at the next station, Alonso Martinez, and took the subway in the opposite direction. I cursed under my breath. The meeting was in less than 2.5 hours, but if I heard I could go back home, pick up my cell phone, and arrive just in time. I remembered leaving it charging on the nightstand. A stupid mistake. 28 years of working, and I had never forgotten something so important. The trip back felt eternal. Every stop, every second lost, increased my anxiety. I finally arrived at my station at 7:43 minutes. I ran through the still quiet streets of Chambéry. I ran up the stairs of our 5-story building without waiting for the elevator. We lived on the 4th floor. I arrived out of breath. I put the key in the lock carefully, trying not to make noise so as not to wake Beatriz if she was still sleeping. The door opened silently. The apartment was in semi-darkness. The living room curtains were still closed. I took 2 steps inside, and then I heard her. Beatriz's voice was coming from the bedroom. She was talking on the phone, but it wasn't her normal voice. It was a tone I had never heard from her, soft, intimate, flirtatious. I froze in the hallway. "Relax, love. He doesn't know anything about us," my wife was saying with a soft laugh that pierced me like a knife. "I already told you he's leaving for Barcelona for 3 days tonight. It's the perfect time." I leaned against the hallway wall, unable to move. My heart was beating so hard I was afraid she could hear it. "Come over at 10 p.m., honey. By then he'll have already left for the airport. I have the apartment keys ready for you. We could be together all weekend without any worries." Silence. Beatriz was listening to the person on the other end. Then she laughed again, that knowing laugh that I thought was only for me. "I miss you too, Gonzalo. These 2 weeks without seeing you have been torture. But it won't be long now. I have wine. I've prepared your favorite food, and well, you know the rest." Gonzalo. The name echoed in my head. Gonzalo Vega Torres, Beatriz's business partner. The 44-year-old man with whom she had opened the interior design company 16 months ago. The business I had financed with 180,000 euros of my savings. I remained motionless in the hallway with my back pressed against the cold wall. Every word that came out of the bedroom was a direct punch to the gut. I felt nauseous. My hands were trembling, and I had to clench my fists to control them. "No, don't worry," Beatriz continued in that honeyed voice that I now found repulsive. "Javier never suspects anything. He's so into his projects and meetings that he barely looks at me. Last night, he was working on those boring plans until 11. He didn't even have dinner with me." I closed my eyes tightly. It was true. Last night, I had worked late on the designs for today's presentation. I had eaten a sandwich in my office while she watched television in the living room. When I finished, Beatrice had already gone to bed. The apartment will be all hours from 10 until Sunday night. I heard her say, 3 whole days, my love. We can stay in bed all Saturday if we want. We'll order takeout, watch movies, do everything we can't do when he's here. There was another pause while she listened to the response from that man, from Gonzalo, the guy whose hand I had shaken dozens of times. The guy who came to our house for dinner. The guy who called me a friend while serving me wine at my own table. Yes, I know it's risky, but that's what makes it more exciting, don't you think? Beatrice laughed. Her laugh sounded youthful, in love. Besides, we've been doing this for 14 months. If he was going to find out, he would have already. He's too trusting, too naive. He thinks our marriage is perfect. 14 months, more than a year. While I was working 70 hours a week to maintain our standard of living, to pay for her company, to finance our son's master's degree, she was with another man. 14 months of lies, of fake kisses, of empty I love yous. Did you bring the keys I gave you last time, right? The ones for the building and the apartment. I don't want you to have to ring the bell. Come straight in. I'll be waiting for you, wearing something special. Wearing something special. The lingerie I had given her for our anniversary 3 months ago. 540 euros for an Italian silk set that I bought thinking it would be a romantic surprise. She had barely worn it with me. It's too elegant to wear at home, she had told me. Now I understood who she was saving it for. My mind was working on 2 simultaneous levels. One part of me wanted to go into that bedroom, snatch the phone from her hands, and scream all the words that were crowding in my throat. I wanted to see her scared. I wanted her to feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling at that moment. But another part of me, the rational part that had built a career based on meticulous planning and precise execution, told me to wait, to observe, to gather information before acting. Emotions cloud judgment. Architects know that the most solid structure requires time and exact calculations. I have to hang up. Honey, Beatrice whispered. I'm going to take a shower and get ready to go to the studio. This afternoon, I have a meeting with the clients for the Pozuelo project, but I won't stop thinking about tonight. I love you, Gonzalo, I love you so much. I heard the distinct sound of a kiss being sent over the phone. Then silence. Beatrice's footsteps headed towards the bathroom. The water in the shower started to run. I moved with extreme care. I entered the bedroom with the steps of a thief in my own house. The bed was unmade, the sheets rumpled. On the nightstand, on Beatrice's side, was her cell phone. On the other side, on my nightstand, was mine, exactly where I had left it connected to the charger. I took it with a trembling hand. The screen lit up, showing 17 notifications of work emails. In another circumstance, I would have been stressed by every unread message. Now they seemed completely irrelevant. I left the bedroom, crossed the living room, opened the front door millimeter by millimeter so it wouldn't make a sound. The shower water was still running. Beatrice was humming a song. She sounded happy. I closed the door behind me and went down the stairs like an automaton. My legs moved by inertia while my brain tried to process what I had just witnessed. I left the building at 8:07 in the morning. The fresh May air hit my face, but I felt no relief. I walked aimlessly for several minutes. People hurried past me with their morning routines, their daily worries. No one noticed that the man in the gray suit walking among them had just seen his life fall apart. I found a small cafeteria on the corner of Almagro Street. I went in. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and pastries turned my stomach. I sat at a table in the back, away from the window. What will you have? Asked a young waitress of about 20. Black coffee, I replied in a voice I didn't recognize as my own. She nodded and walked away. I put the phone on the table, stared at it. Inside that device were all my professional contacts, my schedule, the access codes to million-dollar projects. I had come home just for this object, and instead, I had discovered that my marriage was a sham. I called my secretary from that cafeteria. I told her that a family emergency had come up and to reschedule the meeting with the Japanese for next week. 28 years of an impeccable reputation gave me that credit. She didn't ask any questions. I spent the rest of that Tuesday in a state of controlled shock. I returned to the apartment at 6 in the evening. Beatriz was preparing dinner, radiant, made up as if she were going to a gala. She was wearing a black dress I had never seen on her before. How was the meeting with the Japanese? She asked while chopping vegetables. Her performance was impeccable. Good, very productive, I lied. The words came out automatically while my mind was working on a completely different frequency. I'm glad, honey. Hey, I remembered you're leaving for Barcelona today, right? What time is your flight? At 9:30. I have to leave here at 8. Beatrice nodded with a perfectly feigned expression of understanding. I'll make you something light then. Sandwiches. That's fine. We had dinner in a tense silence that only I perceived. Every bite was hard to swallow. I watched her as she ate, looking for signs I had ignored for 14 months. How did I not see it before? The messages she quickly deleted when I entered the room, the call she took on the balcony, the nights she came home late from the studio with excuses about client meetings. At 8 o'clock sharp, I took my suitcase that I had packed days before. Beatrice kissed me on the cheek with rehearsed affection. Have a good trip. See you on Sunday. Take care, I replied and left. But I didn't go to the airport. I took a taxi directly to the Silken Hotel in Puerto America, 15 minutes from our apartment. I paid for 3 nights in advance in cash. Room 312. From the window, I could see the city lit up, indifferent to my personal catastrophe. For 3 days, I remained locked in that room, thinking. I ate little, slept less. On Friday morning, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront Beatrice until I had irrefutable proof. I wouldn't let myself be carried away by anger. I needed information. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. The following Monday, after returning from Barcelona, I searched the internet for private investigation services in Madrid. I found several, but one caught my attention. Ortega Private Investigations, specializing in marital infidelity and fraud. The website showed impressive credentials. I called that same Monday at 10 in the morning from my office. Ortega Investigations. Good morning, a deep male voice answered. Good morning. I need to hire investigation services. It's a personal matter. I understand perfectly, sir. Could you come to the office? It's on Serrano Street, number 83, 3rd floor. 2 hours later, I was sitting in front of Felix Ortega Diaz, a 55-year-old man with gray hair and a gaze that conveyed experience in human tragedies. His office was discreet but professional. Tell me your situation, Mr. Ruiz, he said after I gave him my name. I told him everything, the words I heard, Gonzalo's name, the 14 months she mentioned. Felix took notes in a notebook, nodding occasionally. What exactly do you need to know? He asked when I finished. Everything. I want to know every detail. When do they meet? Where? How often? I want photographs, recordings if possible. I need evidence that will stand up to any questioning. Do you suspect there's more involved besides adultery? The question stopped me. I hadn't considered it. What do you mean in my experience when businesses are involved, especially businesses that you financed? Sometimes the romance is just part of the picture. I suggest also investigating the financial movements of your wife's company. I felt a void in my stomach. Do it. Investigate everything. My fees are €150 per hour plus expenses. This type of investigation usually takes between 2 and 4 weeks. I estimate about €6,000 approximately. Go ahead. I'll transfer you €3,000 right now as a down payment. Felix extended his hand. I shook it. I'll keep you informed every 72 hours, and Mr. Ruiz, prepare yourself. What I find could be worse than you imagine. I had no idea how right he was. The first 72 hours were the longest of my life. I follow my normal routine, office, projects, meetings. At night, I would go home, where Beatrice acted like a devoted wife. We had dinner together, watched television. She would comment on details of her day at the design studio. I would nod, smile, answer in monosyllables. On Thursday of that first week, Felix called me. We have confirmation. Your wife meets with Mr. Vega 3 times a week on average, Tuesdays and Thursdays at an apartment in Malesana that he rents under his company's name. On Fridays, they have lunch together at La Candela restaurant in Chimberry. Photographs. I'll send them to you by encrypted email in an hour. The images arrived punctually. Beatriz and Gonzalo entering the Malesana building, holding hands, kissing at the door. Gonzalo with his arm around my wife's waist. At the restaurant, the two of them laughing, she touching his face tenderly. Every photo was a stab, but I saved them all methodically in a digital folder. 2 weeks after the investigation began, Felix summoned me to his office again. His expression was somber. "Mr. Ruiz, we found something in the financial records of Moreno Interior Designs." He opened his laptop and turned the screen towards me. He showed me bank statements, transfers, accounting documents. "For the last 14 months, your wife and Mr. Vega have diverted 93,000 euros from the company to a joint account they opened in March of last year. The funds are registered as operating expenses and payments to suppliers, but the suppliers don't exist. They're shell companies." The room seemed to tilt. 93,000 euros of the 180,000 euros you initially invested. The rest is in legitimate company assets. Furniture, inventory, accounts receivable. What do they want that money for? Felix took out another document. "I found a commercial loan application in both their names. They plan to open a second design store, but completely independent without your involvement. They'll use the 93,000 euros as initial capital. It wasn't just adultery, it was theft, conspiracy. They were building a future together with my money while I worked like an idiot to keep them afloat. There's something else," Felix said in a cautious voice. "Something I discovered 2 days ago and wanted to verify before informing you." I looked up from the bank statements I was still holding in my trembling hands. What could be worse than this? The investigator took out his cell phone and swiped his finger across the screen, looking for something specific. When he found it, he turned the device towards me. The image showed a restaurant terrace, 3 people sitting around a table, Beatriz, Gonzalo, and a third person I recognized immediately, my son Marcos. This photograph was taken last Wednesday at Casa Mano restaurant in Lavapis. Time, 2:15 in the afternoon. They were there for almost 3 hours. I looked at the image in disbelief. The 3 of them were laughing. Gonzalo had his arm over the back of Beatriz's chair. Marcos was raising a glass of wine in what looked like a toast. It wasn't a casual or accidental meeting. The familiarity between them was evident. It could be just a business lunch. I said, although my voice lacked conviction. "Marcos sometimes helps his mother with administrative matters for the company." Felix swiped to the next image. Same terrace, different angle. In this photograph, Beatriz and Gonzalo were kissing while Marcos looked away with a bored expression, as if it were so normal that it didn't even deserve his attention. I felt the air leave my lungs. There are 6 more photographs from that same day. In all of them, your son shows full knowledge and acceptance of the relationship between his mother and Mr. Vega. How long has Marcos known? I can't determine that with certainty, but I managed to get access to the security cameras of the building in Malasana where they meet. Your son visited that apartment on 4 occasions during the last 8 months. The first time was on September 22nd of last year, 8 months. Marcos had known about his mother's betrayal for 8 months and never said a word to me, not a sign, not a warning. While I was working to pay for his 28,000 euro master's degree, while I was giving him money for his expenses, while we were having dinner together on Sundays, he kept silent about the destruction of our family. "I need to talk to someone who can confirm this," I said, getting up abruptly. Someone close to Marcos. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a bar near the university with Roberto Sanchez Hill, the father of Andres, Marcos' best friend since high school. Roberto was an accountant. We were 49. We had shared countless family scenes over the last decade. "Javier, you look terrible. What's wrong?" Roberto asked when he saw me arrive looking distraught. I had no energy for small talk. "Did you know that Beatriz has a lover?" Roberto turned pale. His silence was all the answer I needed. "How long have you known, Javier?" How long, Roberto?" He sighed deeply. "Andres told me about 6 months ago." Marcos had told him. "I wanted to tell you. I swear I wanted to, but Andres begged me not to get involved. He said Marcos had made him promise to keep quiet." My hands were trembling so much I had to interlace my fingers on the table. Why? Why would Marcos protect his mother in something like this? Roberto looked at his untouched beer. "According to what Andres told me, Beatriz convinced Marcos that you work too much that you didn't pay attention to her, that she felt lonely and abandoned. Apparently, she told him that Gonzalo made her happy in a way that you no longer could. Every word was a hammer blow. And Marcos accepted it. He justified it. She's his mother, Javier. Children will always side with whoever tells them the story first, especially if that story makes them feel less guilty for keeping the secret. What else do you know? Roberto hesitated, clearly debating internally how much to reveal. Finally, he spoke. Marcos has lent them money. I don't know how much exactly, but Andres mentioned that your son invested some of his savings in the new design project that Beatriz and that guy are planning to open. The world stopped. Marcos invested in the business they're setting up with my stolen money. I didn't know they had stolen money. Oh my God, Javier, I'm so sorry. I left that bar feeling like a man who had just discovered he was living in a house built on quicksand. I had not only lost my wife, I had lost my son too. That night, I came home after 10. Beatriz was already asleep. Marcos hadn't lived with us for 2 years. He had his own apartment near the university that I paid for. 1,200 euros a month in rent, plus 600 for support. I sat in the dark living room for hours. I remembered when Marcos was 6 and fell off his bike in Retiro Park. He scraped both knees. He cried so much I thought he had broken something. I carried him in my arms to the car. I took him to the emergency room. It was nothing serious, just scrapes. But he hugged my neck all the way home saying, "Thanks, Dad." I remembered his graduations, his first day of university, the time I helped him prepare for an impossible math exam until 3 in the morning. The times I defended him when he got into trouble. And now that same child, that 26-year-old young man, had decided that my wife deserved his loyalty more than I did. He had chosen to protect his mother's adultery. Worse, he had invested money in the future she planned to build with her lover. Beatriz's betrayal hurt, but Marcos's betrayal shattered me in a way I had no words to describe. The next day, I called Felix again. I need you to continue the investigation. I want to know absolutely everything, every conversation, every move, every plan they have, no matter the cost. Understood, Mr. Ruiz? Is there anything specific you're looking for? I want to know if there are more people involved, and I want evidence so solid that when the time comes to confront them, they can't deny it or escape the consequences. Felix was silent for a moment. Are you sure you want to continue down this path? Sometimes it's better to just get divorced and move on. They moved on with my money, with my trust, with my life for 14 months. Now it's my turn. The office of lawyer Elena Navarro Campos was on Paseo de la Castellana, the 15th floor of a glass tower with panoramic views of Madrid. 41 years old, brown hair in a neat bun, a navy blue suit that conveyed authority without ostentation. Her office had shelves full of legal codes and a mahogany table where she placed a digital recorder before starting. Everything you tell me here is protected by professional secrecy, Mr. Ruiz. You can speak with complete freedom. I showed her the folders that Felix had compiled over 3 weeks of investigation. 97 photographs, 14 audio recordings, bank statements documenting every diverted euro, entry and exit log from the apartment in Malesana, all organized chronologically with dates, times, and exact locations. Elena reviewed each document with professional meticulousness. She showed no surprise or judgment. She took notes on a tablet as she examined the evidence. Solid material, she finally said, more than enough for a contested divorce for adultery. In Spain, when infidelity is proven with this clarity, the guilty spouse loses the right to compensatory alimony and the division of assets. That's different. They are married under the community property regime, correct? Yes. Then, by law, all assets acquired during the marriage are divided 50-50 regardless of who contributed the money. This includes the apartment, bank accounts, investments. I felt a pang of frustration. So, after stealing from me and betraying me, she still gets half of everything I built. Technically, yes, but there are nuances. The diversion of the 93,000 euro can be claimed as misappropriation of spousal funds. I can sue for that amount to be returned to you with interest before the petition. We can also argue that the initial investment in her company of 180,000 euros was a personal loan, not a donation. Would that work? Elena tilted her head thoughtfully. It depends on how you documented that transaction. Do you have signed contracts, written agreements? I shook my head. It was a direct bank transfer. Beatrice said she needed capital to start, and I just transferred it. We were married. I trusted her. Trust doesn't hold up in court, Mr. Ruiz, but the bank transfer does. We can build a case. I don't guarantee total success, but we will significantly reduce what she receives. How long would the whole process take? A contested divorce in Madrid, between 8 and 12 months from the filing of the lawsuit until the sentence. If they appeal, add another 6 months. Recovery of diverted funds. Another 8 to 10 months in a parallel civil process. Almost 2 years of legal proceedings. 2 years of seeing Beatrice, probably with Gonzalo by her side, defending themselves in court. The idea turned my stomach. In the meantime, what can I do to protect my assets? Elena leaned back in her executive chair. Here comes the tricky part. You can't hide assets or transfer them fraudulently. That's illegal and counterproductive, but you can legally reorganize your personal investments. She took out a notebook and began to make quick calculations based on the asset information I had provided. You have 485,000 euros in investment funds in your personal name acquired before the marriage with an inheritance from your parents. Those do not fall under community property. Keep them exactly where they are. The apartment is worth approximately 620,000 euros according to a current appraisal. That will be divided. Joint current accounts total 115,000 euros. They will also be divided. Your pension plan is private with 230,000 euros, legally protected. She can't touch it until retirement. She did the numbers mentally, calculating a fair partition and assuming we recover the diverted 93,000 euros. You would come out with approximately 580,000 euros in cash, plus your protected investments. She with about 400,000 euros, considering she must return what was stolen and that she loses a share in certain assets due to her conduct. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than giving her half of everything without consequences. What do you recommend as the next step? Elena clasped her hands on the table. It depends on your goals. Do you want to just get divorced as quickly as possible, or do you want this to hurt? The question stopped me. For weeks I had been operating in survival mode, collecting information, controlling emotions. But now, sitting in front of this woman who was offering me concrete options, I had to face what I really wanted. I want justice. I want them to face real consequences for what they did. Then I suggest we obtain more evidence. Specifically, we need video evidence of the adultery. Audio is good, photographs are better, but video recordings inside the apartment where they meet would be definitive. We also need to document any conversation where they admit to the diversion of funds or the plans for the new business. How do we get that? Your private investigator can install hidden cameras if he gets access to the apartment. Legally, it's a gray area, but if the video captures criminal conduct, such as conspiracy to commit fraud, the courts usually admit it as evidence. I thought about it. Felix had mentioned that Gonzalo was renting that apartment. Getting access would be complicated, but not impossible. There's another option, Elena continued. You could create a controlled situation where you are present and confront them with the evidence. If they react by admitting the facts, those statements would be admissible. A trap, an opportunity for the truth to come to light under circumstances you control instead of them controlling. The idea had merit. For 14 months, they had controlled the narrative, the timing, the lies. Now I could reverse that dynamic. I need to think about it, I said, getting up. What are your fees? 500 euros per hour for divorce proceedings. This case requires a minimum of 100 hours. A 20,000 euro advance, adjustable as the case develops. I extended my hand. You have a client, Dr. Navarro. Prepare for a legal war. That night, I made financial decisions I had been putting off. I consolidated my investment funds into a more secure wealth management account. I reviewed the apartment documents. I updated my will, removing Beatrice as the beneficiary of my life insurance, and I began to plan the confrontation that would end 23 years of marriage and change our lives forever. The plan required precise coordination. Felix Ortega obtained 4 high-definition microcameras the size of buttons, with continuous recording of up to 72 hours and cloud storage. Professional devices that cost €1,200 each. I bought them without blinking. Where do you want to install them? Felix asked when we met at his office on Thursday, June 27th. I need coverage of the living room and the master bedroom. Those will be the spaces where they spend the most time. Do you still have free access to your house? Beatrice doesn't suspect anything. Nothing. I'm still the hard-working and trusting husband as always. That same afternoon, while Beatrice was at the studio until 7, I installed the cameras myself. Felix had taught me how. The first one was in the living room, hidden inside the ceiling smoke detector, with a full view of the sofa and dining table. The second one on the bookshelf, camouflaged between the spines of an encyclopedia that no one ever opened. The third one in the bedroom, inside the digital clock on Beatrice's side of the nightstand. The fourth one in the frame of a painting in the hallway that overlooked the main entrance. They all transmitted real-time video to my cell phone through an encrypted application. I could see my own house from anywhere in the world. The next step was to create the perfect opportunity for the trap. On Friday, during dinner, I casually commented I got a call from the head office in Barcelona. They need me to personally review the residential building project on Diagonal. Problems with the municipal permits. Beatrice looked up from her salad with an expression of innocent interest. When do you have to go? I'm leaving on Sunday afternoon. I'll be away until Wednesday. 5 whole days. It's annoying, but there's no alternative. I saw the glint in her eyes. 5 days, more time than they had ever had. Don't worry, honey. I'll take the opportunity to get ahead on work at the studio. We have 2 new projects that require my full attention. I bet my life those projects were named Gonzalo. On Sunday, June 30th, at 6 in the evening, I made my final performance. Suitcase in hand, clothes visibly folded, printed plain tickets on the living room table where Beatrice could see them. Flight IB 643 to Barcelona. Departure 9:15 p.m. Return on Wednesday. Do you have everything you need? She asked, helping me with my laptop bag. I think so. Documents, chargers, clothes for 3 days. She kissed me on the lips. A kiss that tasted absolutely empty. Have a good trip. Call me when you get to the hotel. I will. I went downstairs. I took a taxi that was waiting on the corner. To the Catalonia Plaza Mayor Hotel. I told the driver, 3 kilometers from my house, a 15-minute drive. I checked into room 406 at 7:10 in the evening. I paid for 5 nights in advance, €1,180 in total. Money well spent to document the destruction of my marriage. At 7:30, I opened the camera app on my phone. For split screens, showed my empty apartment. Beatrice still didn't appear in any angle. She was probably in the bathroom getting ready. At 8:15, I saw her come out of the bedroom. She was wearing the red dress I gave her for her birthday, the plunging neckline, high heels. Perfect makeup. She looked beautiful. She looked like the woman I had stopped knowing 14 months ago. The living room camera caught her lighting scented candles on the dining table. She prepared 2 glasses of red wine. She put on soft background music, some jazz that I recognized as the album we listened to on our honeymoon 23 years ago. The irony was nauseating. At 9:57, she received a call on her cell phone. I couldn't hear the conversation because the cameras didn't have audio activated yet, but from her animated gestures and wide smile, I knew exactly who was calling. At 10:17 on the night of Sunday, June 30th, 2024, the hallway camera recorded the front door opening. Gonzalo Vega Torres entered using his own keys. He was carrying a bouquet of red roses and a €120 bottle of Moët and Chandon champagne. Beatrice ran to him, literally ran. She threw herself into his arms. The kiss they shared lasted 42 seconds. I know because I looked at the timer in the corner of the screen, unable to look away. I missed you so much. I could read on her lips when they finally separated. Gonzalo lifted her off the ground, spinning her around. They both laughed like teenagers in love. They entered the living room, still embracing. The hidden camera on the bookshelf caught the perfect angle as Gonzalo took a small box out of his jacket pocket. Jewelry. He opened it, showing it to Beatrice. She put her hands to her mouth in an expression of surprise and joy. A necklace. I could see the glint of gold even through the digital image. Gonzalo put it on her neck. She looked at herself in the living room mirror, touching the jewel with trembling fingers. They kissed again, served the champagne, and toasted. The living room camera, with the microphone now remotely activated, caught the exact words. "To our future together," Gonzalo said, raising his glass. "To the apartment that will be ours alone in 6 months," Beatrice replied, clinking her glass against his. "Have you spoken to the lawyer about the divorce yet?" "Not yet. I want to wait until we have everything ready for the second store. That way, when I ask for the separation, I'll already have my own business established without being financially dependent on him." "Smart. Always so smart, my love." They sat on the sofa, the same sofa where I watched movies on Sundays. Gonzalo put his arm around Beatrice's shoulders. "Do you think he suspects anything?" he asked. Beatrice laughed. That laugh that for years had seemed musical to me now sounded cruel. "Javier, please. That man only thinks about his architectural projects and boring meetings. I could have a lover living in a guest room, and he wouldn't even notice." Every word was poison injected directly into my veins. But I continued recording. For the rest of that Sunday night, I recorded for 11 continuous hours. I watched them have dinner together at my table. I watched them dance slowly in my living room. I listened to conversations about the future they planned to build together, about trips they would take when she was finally free of me. Every minute was documented with precise time stamps in digital files that were automatically stored in the cloud. At 4 in the morning, I turned off the application. I couldn't keep watching. I needed to sleep, even if only for a few hours. When I woke up at 9 on Monday, I opened the cameras again. Gonzalo was still there. He was sleeping in my bed next to Beatrice, his arm possessively around her. I made myself coffee in the hotel room, using the electric kettle in the minibar. The taste was bitter, but I needed it. I had real work meetings that morning. Life didn't stop just because mine was falling apart. At 2 in the afternoon, between one video conference and another, I checked the live images again. Beatrice and Gonzalo were having lunch in the living room, pasta with white wine. They were talking relaxed, comfortable in their betrayal. At 2:34 in the afternoon of Monday, July 1st, the hallway camera detected movement at the front door. Someone was using keys to get in. My first thought was panic. A neighbor with an emergency, the doorman. But the person who entered was no stranger. It was Marcos, my son, with keys to our apartment, entering as if nothing was wrong while his mother was with her lover. The shock left me paralyzed in front of the mobile screen. Marcos closed the door behind him and walked directly into the living room like someone coming into his own house. Beatrice and Gonzalo looked up. Neither showed surprise. Neither seemed alarmed or ashamed. "You're late," Beatrice said in a motherly tone. I said 2 o'clock. "There's traffic on Grand Via," Marcos replied, taking off his jacket and leaving it on the back of a chair. "My chair." Gonzalo stood up and shook my son's hand. "How's the master's program, kid?" "Exhausting. Last week before summer vacation. Is there any pasta left?" Beatrice served him a plate. The three of them sat around the table like a family that didn't include me. "Is your father still in Barcelona?" Gonzalo asked in a casual tone. "Supposedly until Wednesday, 5 whole days this time, a personal record." The three of them laughed. That shared laugh, that moment of complicity behind my back, hurt me more than any kiss I had witnessed between Beatrice and Gonzalo. "Perfect," said Beatrice. "Marcos, I need you to review the documents for the business loan we applied for. Your father has contacts in the banking sector, and if by chance he asks anything when he gets back, I want the story to be consistent." Marcos nodded as he ate. "Don't worry, Mom. I got it under control. If he asks, I'll tell him it's an independent project of yours financed by external investors. He'll never investigate beyond that. He's so predictable." Gonzalo intervened, leaning back in his chair with an expression of absolute sufficiency. 23 years of marriage, and the routine never changes. Work, meetings, projects. The man is a money-making machine with no life of his own. "That's exactly why this works so well," Beatrice added, gesturing between herself and Gonzalo. While he's busy building buildings for others, we're building our real future. Marcos speared a piece of pasta with his fork. When are you going to take the next step? You've been at it for over a year. Wouldn't it be easier to just file for divorce directly? Patience, son. These things require planning. I want to make sure that when I ask for the separation, I have everything lined up, the second store running, the accounts organized, documented evidence that your father wasn't paying me enough attention to justify the divorce. That way the judge will be more favorable to me in the division of assets. My wife's words were calculated, cold, methodical. It wasn't blind passion, it was deliberate strategy. And what do I get out of all this? Marcos asked. The question froze my blood. Beatrice smiled. We already talked about that, honey. When I get the divorce and establish my new business with Gonzalo, we'll give you the small apartment in Malisana. The one Gonzalo is renting now, 35 square meters, but in an excellent area. It's worth about 200,000 euros on the market. It will be yours in your name. In exchange for what? In exchange for your silence now and your testimony later. If we need it. If your father decides to get difficult in the divorce, I'll need you to testify that he was absent, that he didn't participate in family life, that he left me alone constantly. Marcos considered the proposal. A 200,000 euro apartment for telling the truth that dad was always working. Sounds fair. Exactly. And you wouldn't be technically lying. Your father does work too much. It's just that, well, you omit certain details. The three of them laughed again. This conspiratorial laugh that celebrated my destruction while they ate the food I had paid for in the apartment I maintained, planning to rob me with the son I had raised. Gonzalo poured himself more wine. I toast to the perfect family. To Beatrice, who had the courage to seek the happiness she deserved. To Marcos, who understands that real loyalty is to the one who makes you happy, not to the one who simply pays the bills. And to me, the lucky one who found the right woman, even though she was already married. Your father will have to pay child support until you finish your master's, Beatrice explained. It's the law. You're 26, but you're still a dependent student. Probably about 1,800 euros a month. More than enough. And then you'll have your apartment, your university degree, and contacts in the design business. You'll be ready for adult life. Your father will have already served his purpose. His purpose, as if I were just an ATM programmed to dispense money until it was no longer useful. I remained in that hotel room, staring at the screen until nightfall. I recorded every second, every word, 11 hours and 18 minutes of material that documented not only adultery, but a complete family conspiracy for economic fraud and legal manipulation. When Marcos finally said goodbye at 6 in the evening, he hugged his mother. Thanks for including me, Mom. Dad never treated me like an adult capable of making his own decisions. You do. Beatrice caressed his face. You're my son. We'll always be in this together. On Tuesday, July 2nd, I received an unexpected call from Felix at 11 in the morning. His voice sounded different, urgent. Mr. Ruiz, I need to see you immediately. I found something that completely changes the picture. What did you find? Not over the phone. Come to my office. It's important. An hour later, I was sitting in front of his desk. Felix had his laptop open and a grave expression that did not bode well. You remember I asked for permission to thoroughly investigate Gonzalo Vega's business activities, right? I nodded. Yes, you wanted to check for more financial irregularities. I hired a specialist in forensic computing. He turned the screen towards me. It showed digital folders organized by dates. I immediately recognized the files. They were architectural plans. My architectural plans. What is this? I asked, although I already knew the answer. For the last 10 months, Gonzalo Vega has copied 47 complete architectural projects from your work computer. Residential designs, commercial plans, structural calculations, everything. My blood ran cold. How to get access to my files? Felix opened another folder showing screenshots of emails. Your wife provided him with your passwords. Look at this conversation between them from April 22nd. I read Beatrice's message to Gonzalo. My love, Javier's access keys to the business platform are username JavierRM24, password Architect Madrid 77. Don't change anything, just copy the projects you need. He never checks the access logs. My own wife, giving my corporate credentials to the man she was cheating on me with. What did he want my projects for? Felix opened an Excel document. He sold them. Look at this spreadsheet we found on his hard drive. The table showed the names of competing construction companies. Hotel Centro Madrid Renovación Plans. 38,000 euros sold to Reformas Delgado. The list continued page after page of my projects, my work, my intellectual property sold to companies that competed directly with my firm. What's the total? 127,000 euros in the last 10 months. All deposited in Gonzalo Vega's personal bank account at Banco Sabadell. I felt dizzy. It wasn't just marital betrayal. It was industrial theft, corporate espionage. My wife was not only cheating on me with that man, but she was actively helping him steal my work to enrich themselves together. There's more. Felix continued without giving me time to process. We found a patent application filed by Gonzalo on June 3rd. He's trying to register in his name a modular design system that you developed 2 years ago. He showed me the official documents. My system, the one that had taken months to perfect, the one I had presented at an international conference on sustainable architecture, was now listed in a patent application as an original invention of Gonzalo Vega Torres. If that patent is approved, you won't be able to use your own system without paying him royalties. And worse, he could sue your company for alleged intellectual property infringement. The magnitude of the deception overwhelmed me. It hadn't been a passionate affair that arose spontaneously. It had been a calculated operation from the beginning. Gonzalo needed access to my designs. Beatriz was the perfect key. The adultery was probably just a means to a lucrative end. Did Beatriz know about the project's sales? Felix nodded, showing me another email dated May 12th. Beatriz was writing to Gonzalo, "Love, the 22,000 euros from Hostels has already arrived in your account. When we have enough money accumulated, we can open the second store without needing a bank loan. You're a genius for taking advantage of the resources Javier leaves so exposed." Resources. She called my work resources to be taken advantage of. "This is criminal," I said in a trembling voice. "It's not just divorce, it's fraud, intellectual property theft, conspiracy." Exactly. And it completely changes the legal strategy. Dr. Navarro needs to see this immediately. With this evidence, we can file a criminal complaint in addition to a civil lawsuit. Felix handed me a USB drive. Here's everything. Complete emails, bank statements of the transfers, copies of the stolen projects with metadata proving your original authorship, the fraudulent patent application. 243 pages of documentary evidence. I took the device with hands that trembled with contained rage. For 14 months, I had thought the worst-case scenario was that my wife loved me less, that she had found an emotional connection with another man. I could have lived with that eventually. The human heart is unpredictable. But this was not a matter of the heart. It was an organized crime executed by the two people I trusted most, my wife and my son, who, according to the recordings, knew perfectly well about the business his mother was building with Gonzalo. "What do you recommend as the next step?" I asked, trying to maintain a professional composure. "Finish the week of supposed absence according to the original plan. Let them feel safe. In the meantime, I'll coordinate with Dr. Navarro to prepare a definitive legal confrontation. When you return on Wednesday, we'll have everything ready to activate simultaneous lawsuits, contested divorce, criminal complaint for intellectual property theft, civil lawsuit for damages, and a request for precautionary measures to freeze their bank accounts." How much time do we have before Gonzalo notices we accessed his computer? Our specialist left no traces, but to be on the safe side, let's act within the next 72 hours. By Friday at the latest, I left that office with the flash drive in the inside pocket of my jacket. 127,000 euros stolen, 47 projects sold illegally, a fraudulent patent, 93,000 euros diverted from the company, and my son an accomplice to it all, receiving promises of an apartment in exchange for betraying me. The final count was clear. I wouldn't just be fighting for dignity or emotional justice. I would be fighting for every stolen euro, every plagiarized design, every documented lie. On Wednesday, July 3rd, I officially returned from Barcelona. Beatrice received me at home with a routine kiss and a question about how the trip had gone. I lied, saying everything had been resolved satisfactorily. She smiled, relieved. For the next 3 months, I lived a perfectly orchestrated double life. By day, I was the devoted husband, the responsible architect, the father who punctually transferred 1,800 euros a month to Marcos's account for his support. By night, I reviewed every legal document that Elena Navarro prepared with surgical precision. The lawsuits were drafted in August. 3 separate but coordinated documents. A contested divorce for adultery with a request for the complete elimination of compensatory alimony. A criminal complaint against Gonzalo Vega Torres for intellectual property theft, fraud, and misappropriation. A civil lawsuit against both Beatriz and Gonzalo for conspiracy to defraud and economic damages calculated at 218,000 euros. Elena also prepared a formal notification for Marcos. I couldn't completely disinherit him according to Spanish legislation that protects the strict legal share children, but I could cut off all financial support while I was alive. The document specified the immediate cancellation of the remaining university tuition payment, the suspension of monthly transfers, elimination as a beneficiary of life insurance, and reduction of future inheritance to the mandatory legal minimum. Are you sure you want to include your son in this? Elena asked when we reviewed the final papers at her office on September 27th. I saw the recordings. I heard his words. Marcos consciously chose a side. Now he will live with the consequences of that decision. On Monday, September 30th at 9 in the morning, everything was ready. Elena had coordinated with a court officer named Vicente Ramos Ortiz to accompany us as an official witness. The lawsuits were sealed and registered in the courts. Gonzalo's bank accounts already had a preventive seizure order pending execution. Only the moment of confrontation remained. That same morning, I called Beatrice from the office. I forgot some important documents at home. I'm going to stop by to pick them up at 11. Will you be there? Yes, honey. I'm working from home today. I have a virtual meeting at 12. Perfect. I knew from the cameras that on Mondays, Gonzalo visited the apartment between 10 and 2 in the afternoon. Beatrice had given him permanent access during my normal work hours. At 10:45, Elena, Officer Vicente, and I parked in front of the building in Chambéry. I checked my phone. The camera app showed Beatriz and Gonzalo in the living room. He was sitting on the sofa reviewing papers. She was making coffee in the kitchen. Ready? Elena asked with a leather briefcase containing 243 pages of evidence organized into labeled folders. Ready. We went up the stairs. Officer Vicente had his judicial ID visible. Elena was wearing a dark gray suit that projected absolute authority. I had the keys to my own apartment in my hand. At 11:02 in the morning of Monday, September 30th, 2024, I opened the door of my home for the last time as a married man. The sound of the key in the lock made Beatrice come out of the kitchen. Her expression went from confusion to absolute terror in 2 seconds when she saw I wasn't alone. Javier, what? Who are these people? Gonzalo appeared behind her. When he saw me, his face lost all color. He tried to back away into the bedroom, but Elena spoke with a voice that cut the air like a knife. Mr. Gonzalo Vega Torres, stay exactly where you are. I'm Dr. Elena Navarro Campos, Mr. Javier Ruiz Morales' lawyer. This is Vicente Ramos Ortiz, a court officer from the Court of First Instance of Madrid. Vicente showed his credentials. Gonzalo froze. What does this mean? Beatrice asked in a high-pitched voice. Javier, I entered the living room that had been my home for 23 years. I sat in my favorite armchair with deliberate calm. Elena and Vicente remained standing, flanking me like guards. It means the show is over. Beatrice, the 14 months of lies, the nights with your lover in my bed, the 93,000 euros stolen from the company, the 127,000 euro Gonzalo earned selling my architectural projects. It all ends today. Beatrice shook her head violently. I don't know what you're talking about. Are you crazy? Elena opened her briefcase with a precise movement. She took out the first folder. Folder A, photographic and videographic documentation of adultery. 72 hours of continuous recording taken in this apartment during the weekend of June 30th to July 2nd. Includes explicit conversations about divorce plans and distribution of assets. She placed a folder on the coffee table. Beatrice looked at it as if it were a venomous snake. Folder B, bank statements demonstrating systematic diversion of funds from Moreno. Interior designs to an undeclared joint account. Total amount stolen, €93,000 over 14 months. The second folder on the table. Folder C, evidence of intellectual property theft. 47 architectural projects authored by Mr. Ruiz. Sold illegally by Mr. Vega to competing companies. Total obtained €127,000 includes emails where Mrs. Beatriz Moreno provides corporate access passwords to Mr. Vega. Gonzalo finally spoke in a trembling voice. That's an invasion of privacy. You can't use illegally obtained information. Elena smiled humorlessly. The recordings were made on Mr. Ruiz's property with equipment installed by him. Completely legal. The emails were obtained through an authorized forensic computer examination in a corporate fraud investigation, admissible in any court. Folder D. Elena continued relentlessly. Fraudulent patent application filed by Mr. Vega, attempting to register as his own a modular design system developed by Mr. Ruiz in 2022. This constitutes industrial plagiarism and can result in penalties of up to 4 years in prison, according to the Spanish Penal Code. The fourth folder. The pile grew on the table like a monument to their betrayal. And finally, folder E, complete transcripts of conversations between Mrs. Moreno, Mr. Vega, and Marcos Ruiz Moreno, my client's son, where the three discussed strategies to maximize economic benefits from the divorce through false testimony and concealment of assets. Beatrice collapsed onto the sofa. Tears began to roll down her cheeks. Javier, please, we could talk about this. It was a mistake. I'm so sorry. Now she cries. I said in a voice I didn't recognize as my own. For 14 months, she didn't cry. For 14 months, she planned my destruction with smiles and fake kisses. Beatrice knelt in front of me, literally knelt on the living room floor with her hands clasped in a gesture of supplication. Her makeup, streaked by tears, gave her a disheveled look. Javier, please listen to me. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I was confused, lonely, looking for attention I felt I wasn't getting. But I love you. I've always loved you. Gonzalo means nothing compared to you. Gonzalo looked at her with an expression of absolute betrayal. Beatrice, what are you saying? Shut up, Gonzalo. She snapped at him without even looking at him. Her eyes remained fixed on me, desperate. Javier, I'll return every euro, the €93,000 from the company. I swear. I'll sell the design studio, if necessary. I'll end any relationship with Gonzalo today, right now, in front of you. Just give me a chance to fix it. 23 years of marriage. I said in a flat voice. You throw them away so easily. 5 minutes ago, you were with him planning our divorce. Now suddenly you love me. I was afraid of losing you. That's why I was planning to ask for the divorce first, so I wouldn't face rejection. But if you give me another chance, I'll do couples therapy, whatever it takes. Don't destroy our family over a mistake. Elena intervened with a professional tone. 14 months of systematic adultery, documented theft, premeditated conspiracy. That is not a mistake, Mrs. Moreno. It is a sustained campaign of betrayal and fraud. The apartment door opened abruptly. Marcos burst in, clearly alerted by a call from his mother. He stopped when he saw the scene. His mother kneeling, Gonzalo pale by the window, the court officer with his credentials visible, Elena with folders spread out. Dad, what's going on here? Your mother and her lover are facing the consequences of their actions. And you too, Marcos. My son turned pale. I didn't do anything. You knew. For 8 months you knew and kept quiet. Worse, you actively participated in their conspiracy in exchange for the promise of an apartment. I have recordings of every word you said at that table on July 1st. Marcos shook his head frantically. Mom told me it was complicated, that I wouldn't understand, that it was better not to get involved. She manipulated me. She manipulated you into accepting a €200,000 apartment as payment for your silence. I didn't see it that way. Mom said you were emotionally abandoning us, that you worked so much you didn't care about us. She made me feel that protecting her was the right thing to do. I stood up from the armchair. Marcos instinctively stepped back as if he was afraid I was going to hit him. I had never laid a hand on him in his life, but the fear in his eyes was real. For 26 years, I gave you everything. I said in a voice that trembled with contained emotion. Education in the best schools, family vacations every summer, a fully paid university education without you having to work. I gave you a car when you turned 21. I financed your own apartment so you could have independence, and you decide that protecting your mother's adultery is the right thing to do. Dad, please, I was naive. I was afraid of losing you both, and I took a side. I thought if I kept quiet, you would eventually resolve your problems without the family exploding. The family already exploded. Marcos. 14 months ago, when your mother chose another man. 8 months ago, when you chose to protect her. Today, we're just making official what was already destroyed. Elena took a manila envelope from her briefcase. Marcos Ruiz Moreno. This is a formal notification of the suspension of paternal financial support. Effective immediately. Cancellation of the remaining university tuition payment. Elimination of the monthly transfers of €1,800. Revocation of life insurance benefits. You have 30 days to vacate the apartment on Atacha Street that your father pays for. Marcos opened the envelope with trembling hands. He read the legal document. Dad, I'm €28,000 short of finishing my master's. It's my last semester. If you cancel the payment now, I'll lose 2 years of studies. You should have thought of that before. Please don't do this. I'll get a job, I'll pay rent, I'll do whatever it takes, but don't take away my chance to finish my degree. Your mother promised you an apartment. Ask her for it, or Gonzalo. They are your allies now. Beatriz stood up from the floor and ran to Marcos, hugging him protectively. Javier, punish me all you want, but don't ruin our son's future. He's not to blame. He's not to blame. Sitting at that table, I pointed to the dining table, drinking the wine I bought, eating the food I paid for, laughing at me while they planned to rob me. I recorded every word, Beatriz, every laugh, every conspiracy. Gonzalo finally found his voice. The accusations of intellectual property theft are false. I developed those projects independently. If there are similarities with your work, it's a coincidence. Elena smiled coldly. Coincidence? We have dated emails where you specifically request CAD files for Mr. Ruiz. We have metadata from the files that prove they were created on Mr. Ruiz's corporate computer between 2022 and 2024. We have contracts signed by you selling those designs to Construcciones Hernandez, Inmobiliaria Castilla, and Reformas Delgado. That doesn't prove anything. Elena took out another folder. No. Here, I have a contract dated May 12th signed by you selling the design of a commercial complex in Mostels to Inmobiliaria Castilla for €22,000. This design, she placed the plans on the table, was created by Mr. Ruiz on March 14th. The original files have a digital watermark that identifies his authorship. Your version is an exact copy with the watermark clumsily removed. Gonzalo fell silent. He had no defense. The criminal complaint has already been filed at the investigating Court No. 7 of Madrid, case number 473224. Crime of misappropriation of intellectual property with the aggravating circumstance of systematic recidivism. Probable sentence, between 2 and 4 years in prison plus full compensation for damages. I'll pay for everything, Gonzalo said desperately. I'll return every euro I earned selling those projects. I'll withdraw the patent application. Just don't press criminal charges. Too late, Elena replied. Negotiations are made before filing lawsuits, not after. The legal process is already underway. 8 months after that Monday, September 30th, I sat on the terrace of my new apartment in the Salamanca neighborhood overlooking Retiro Park. It was Saturday, May 28th, 2025, at 11 in the morning. The spring sun was pleasantly warm as I drank coffee and reviewed the final documents Elena had sent me by email. The divorce decree had arrived the previous Thursday. After 8 months of proceedings, hearings, witness statements, and the presentation of irrefutable evidence, the judge ruled as follows. Marriage dissolved due to proven adultery. Beatriz Moreno Sanz lost any right to compensatory alimony. The Division of Community Property granted her 68,000 euros, an amount calculated after deducting the 93,000 euros she had to return for the diversion of business funds. Of the 620,000 euros that our old apartment in Chambéry was worth, I received the full amount after buying her corresponding share with the savings I had legally protected. I sold it immediately for 425,000 euros. I couldn't live in that space contaminated by memories of betrayal. The criminal proceedings against Gonzalo Vega Torres had concluded 2 weeks earlier. A 2-year suspended prison sentence, conditional on him paying full compensation of 218,000 euros within 10 years. Monthly payments of 1,818 euros for 120 months. If he missed a single payment, the suspension would be revoked and he would have to serve an effective prison sentence. His design company, shared with Beatriz, went bankrupt in December, with no capital, no reputation after the public scandal of the trial, and no clients willing to hire the services of designers involved in business fraud. Moreno Interior Designs closed definitively on January 22nd, leaving debts of 84,000 euros with suppliers. Beatriz had to sell her car, a BMW worth 32,000 euros. She moved to a rented apartment in Vallecas, a much more affordable area than Chambéry. She now worked as a sales assistant in a furniture store, earning 1,300 euros a month. At 49, she was starting from scratch, with no assets, no business, no the comforts that I had provided for her for 23 years. Gonzalo was living with his sister in Getafe. He declared partial insolvency. A full seizure of his bank accounts left a balance of just 6,000 euros. The apartment in Malesana that he was renting, he lost. His destroyed professional reputation meant that no construction or design company in Madrid would ever hire him. But the consequence that hurt me the most, even after everything, was Marcos. My son dropped out of his master's degree in business administration with exactly 1 semester left to graduate, 28,000 euros in tuition that he couldn't pay. 2 years of studies lost. He had to vacate his apartment on Atocha Street. He temporarily moved in with Beatriz in that small rented apartment in Vallecas. He got a job as an administrative assistant at a logistics company, a salary of 1,180 euros a month. Nothing compared to the opportunities he would have had with an MBA degree and the contacts I could have provided. He tried to contact me 3 times. Phone calls I didn't answer. A long email sent in February explaining that he had been manipulated, that he understood my anger, that he begged for forgiveness. I deleted it without finishing it. In March, he sent me a physical letter to my new address. I don't know how he got the information. The letter said, "Dad, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. Every day, I live with shame for my decisions. I'm not asking you for money or help. I just want you to know that I miss you and that I am deeply sorry for betraying you. Your unworthy son, Marcos." I put that letter in a drawer without replying. Maybe one day, years in the future, when the pain subsided, we could talk. But not now, not when the wound was still bleeding. My life, paradoxically, flourished after the destruction. In November, I met Silvia Montero Cruz, an architect specializing in sustainable design, 43 years old, divorced with no children. We were introduced at a professional conference on green construction in Barcelona. We talked for hours about projects, about shared passions for creating spaces that improve people's lives. Our relationship began slowly, without rushing, without lies. Sylvia knew exactly what had happened with Beatriz. I told her everything during our 3rd meeting. She listened without judgment, then shared her own story of an ex-husband who had cheated on her with her best friend. We were 2 people rebuilding, learning to trust again. In February, my architectural firm won an international bid to design a sustainable residential complex in Lisbon. A 1,200,000 euro contract, the biggest project of my career. They offered me to lead it personally. I accepted. It meant traveling to Portugal for 2 weeks every month for a year and a half. But Sylvia, being an independent architect, could accompany me. We would even collaborate on aspects of the design related to energy efficiency, her specialty. Today, sitting on that terrace overlooking Retiro, I reflected on the cost of justice. I had won legally. I had recovered my dignity, my assets, control over my life. Beatriz, Gonzalo, and Marcos faced tangible consequences for their actions, but 23 years of marriage are not erased by court judgments. The memories of Marcos as a child, of the young man I thought I knew, still hurt. Nights where I wondered if I worked too much, if I neglected signs I should have seen, if part of the blame was mine for the emotional absences Beatriz mentioned. Elena once told me, there is no perfect revenge. It always comes at a price to the one who exacts it. She was right. I won all the legal battles, but I lost the family I thought I had. However, looking forward instead of back, I saw possibilities that didn't exist before. Sylvia came onto the terrace with 2 cups of tea. She sat next to me, her hand naturally finding mine. Thinking about the Lisbon project, she asked, among other things, Marcos. Again, I nodded. She squeezed my hand with silent understanding. Someday, maybe you can forgive him, but you're not obligated to do it now or ever. The important thing is that you chose to live with the truth instead of comfortable lie. She was right. For 14 months, I lived deceived, happy in an ignorance built on betrayals. Now I live with a painful but real truth. I preferred honest pain to false happiness. My phone rang. It was my partner from the architectural firm with news about the final approval of the permits for the Lisbon project. Everything is a go. Construction starts in July. I looked at Sylvia. I looked at the park where families were strolling on a Saturday morning. I looked at the finalized divorce documents on the table. 23 years ended. I was 52 years old a month ago. The rest of my life ahead of me. And for the first time in 8 months, I smiled genuinely, thinking about the future.